Okay, sports fans, guess what? Tonight we're going to be talking about something special near and dear to our hearts. Because this actual tank has some personal attachments to my friend Adam, who's my partner in crime in this. So we're going to be talking about the M18 Hellcat. This is one of the first ground-up design hunter-destroyers that the U.S. came up with. And it came up later in the design and development in World War II, and it's a smaller, more agile tank, and it has some very unique features. But I think we'll start off with Adam giving you some specifications about our Hellcat.
Yeah, so there was 2,507 Hellcats built. They were built between July 1943 and October 1944. They weighed about 17 tons, or 37,000 pounds. They were about 9 feet 5 inches tall.
Lightweight then.
Yeah, fairly light considered.
Almost half of a Sherman.
Right.
Yeah.
Their armor went from 4.8 millimeters to 25.4 millimeters. Now, this would be one of the thinnest armored tanks in the war.
Oh, you wouldn't get very close to the enemy in that.
No, you wouldn't. We'll talk about why that's the case later on when we talk about its development. But
okay.
It had a 76 millimeter gun, which, if you remember from some of our other videos, was very standard in both German and Russian tanks. The T-34 started out with that 76 millimeter gun. All the martyrs when they stole that 76 millimeter gun. Yep. So it was pretty prevalent, good gun for the war, although it would be underpowered by the end of the war. And it had a Continental radial engine, 350 horsepower, which in the later runs of the Hellcat, they supercharged.
Oh, okay.
Which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, okay. So it had that Continental aircraft engine that they use in the Shermans and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, but 350 horsepower in the Sherman also?
Yeah. So
this has twice the horsepower to weight ratio as the Shermans had then.
Yep. And as you'll notice here, open topped.
Oh, so it's not a tank then. Is it considered a tank without?
It is considered a self-propelled gun, a tank destroyer. It is not considered a full tank.
Okay. So it's kind of like the Martyr series of the Germans had, the Martyr 3s and 3Ms and.
All right, so that's some of the specifications. What were some of the things that you learned about the Hellcat?
Well, I understand it was a quick sucker.
It was.
Wasn't it? Did I understand quickly? Did I understand that it was the quickest tank of any of the tanks, of any of the Allied or the Axis tanks?
I believe that's true. I haven't seen it broken down in comparison to other tanks, but it was sure fast.
What was the speed? 55 miles an hour.
55 miles an hour on the road. So it could go freeway speeds.
Yeah.
In a tank.
What would it do off-road? Do you have that number?
Yeah, off-road it was about 26 miles per hour.
So it was twice as fast as all the other tanks.
Twice as fast or more. Like if you'll remember, there were some tanks. Was it the Pershing that was super slow off-road? 8 miles an hour off-road. Yeah. It was
25 miles an hour on the road or something like that, but 8 miles an hour off the road.
Yeah. So it was
the King Tiger was still 25, 27 miles an hour, but it was like 16 miles an hour off-road.
Right.
So it was twice as fast as the Pershing. So
yeah, so this is 3 times faster than the Pershing off-road. 24 miles per hour was the top speed of many tanks. And so even off-road, it could outrun most tanks.
Yeah. Well, that made it very convenient for it if it was going to be a hunter-killer, because it could attack and then bug out.
Exactly. One of the main design features of it was exactly that. It was designed to be very light, so that it could zoom past. One of the faults of the German tanks was that their turret traverse speed was quite slow, and so they could drive around like a tiger and get to the backside before they could turn their turret and get shot from the back.
Wouldn't that piss off?
Yeah.
You pull up the big old Tiger tank, and there's this little thing, nanny, 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 but then shoot you in the ass and run away.
Yep.
But it had a pretty good gun, though.
Yeah, it had a
it had a bigger gun than the Sherman then, because the Shermans had 75 millimeters.
right.
Okay, so these were the larger, more powerful shells. I saw a thing on YouTube the other day about that 88 millimeter guns they're developing for the King Tigers and stuff, and the flak 40s and the flak 88s. They had the same diameter shell on those things, but it was like the difference between a 223 and a 7mm shell. I mean, or like a 22 shell was this big and a 223 shell. They might have the same diameter cartridge, but they had so much more power behind them. That's why the Jagd Panther and the Jagd Tiger and the King Tiger were so devastating. They had not that much bigger round
Shell, but a lot longer.
But the shells were twice as big. It's like comparing a 22 to a 223.
Mm-hmm.
If you're no gun ammunition. So.
Yeah, so what makes this special is my grandpa served in World War II.
Right.
And he served in the 807th. I believe it was the 807th. My cousins or aunts and uncles might have to correct me if I'm wrong there. But he served in the 807th Tank Destroyer Division, which was a Hellcat tank destroyer battalion.
Yeah.
Part of it. To my knowledge, he didn't serve. He wasn't he wasn't in one of the tanks, one of the Hellcats, but he did serve in the division with one.
Okay, so it might have been the logistics of support or something.
Right.
Okay, yeah. So he had intimate knowledge of the Hellcats. So that's still pretty close.
Yeah.
Now, if they served in the Battle of the Bulge, and did they serve under Sherman at all? I mean, George Patton?
They did.
Okay, because my uncle was on a senior member of George Patton's staff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, they actually were rejected from the first, I believe it was the First Army, I can't remember that general's name, but he was not at all interested in the M18. And so they got pushed off to Patton's.
And he could see what the value of them was.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. I was reading about how the Hunter destroyer tanks, that's their whole game, is to shoot and run, shoot and run. They're saying that like the Jagd Panthers, they're big and they were quick compared to some of the other tanks, but they'd have to shoot because if they shot more than one or two shells in the same place, the British would start just dropping the artillery on them.
Right.
Or call in airstrikes or something. So they had to shoot and run, shoot and run.
One of the unique things about this as a tank destroyer is it had a fully traversable turret.
Oh.
Unlike
most tank
destroyers, for example, the Russians, the
SU.
Yeah, the SU 122 122s.
122s.
Yeah. They were a fixed turret, other than just being able to move the gun up and down. And then the Stugs, all of the German ones had a fixed turret, and so.
There's a Stug 3. So this would probably be comparable size-wise with a Stug 3.
Mm-hmm. And similar use cases. This is a good.
Here's the Jagd Panther right here. Of course, it's half the size, but
right.
Those are all hunter killers. They refer. Well, the Stug 3 didn't start out that way, but it ended up functioning in that role a lot. But so it's about but see, all these have just the fixed.
Had that fixed turret, yeah.
Fixed turret, so they had to use their double. They had to pull the tank up within about 10 degrees one way or the other, so I guess the driver and the gunner had to work pretty close together on those.
Right.
But, all right. Well, we're not talking about German tanks tonight, so we'll put these back. But
Right.
those are some comparables.
Right. And what was interesting about the M18 as well is, although it was designed as that hunter-killer tank-destroyer role, it would end up being a quite versatile tank. They would use it for lots of other types of combat.
Oh, like how did it do for infantry support and all that stuff?
It did well. It was that was one of the ended up primary uses was infantry support. Although, so the armor was only thick enough to handle.
It was a lot smaller than a Yod Tiger.
Yeah.
Okay.
That size comparison.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Same roles though.
Same role. The
These
armor
couldn't bug out very fast.
no, they couldn't. The armor on the M18 was only thick enough to handle small arms fire. It couldn't handle tank fire, and so it worked well for infantry support as long as they weren't against other tanks, and it worked well for tank destroying as long as they can duck in and duck out.
Yeah. All right. I hate. I think these tanks are really glamorous. I don't think I'd want to drive a tank in World War II. The lives on these guys. Okay, you have no armor protection on this, but just shoot and get out of there. Shoot and get out of there. Mm-hmm. Which would be kind of fun, until they finally
shot you. Yeah.
But I was reading about T-34-85s, or 80,000 T-34s, and less than 12,000 of those survived the war.
Right.
So.
Speaking of that, the M18 had the best kill-death ratio of any tank destroyer that the U.S. fielded, or tank. Both tank or tank destroyer. It had the best kill-death ratio. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what that was?
Yeah, it was 2.4 to 1.
Well, that's not very good because the elephants were like 13 to 1 or 10 to 1.
Right, but they weren't fielded very often.
Okay. I don't. 2.4. Well, yeah, but that's per capita. I mean, they didn't put them out very long, but you put out an elephant and it goes out and shoots 13 to 1 tanks.
Right.
Till they got killed. They only had 90 of them. They still shot 13 tanks for each one that they got killed. So do you know that ratio on the 100 on those?
Yeah, that's the 2.4.
Okay, so that's...
But you got to think that this is a 30,000-pound tank.
Yeah.
And what it's going up against at this point in the war is Panthers and Tigers.
Yeah.
And so it was killing Panthers and Tigers at a 2.4 to 1 ratio.
Okay, all right. I thought it was higher than that when I read that, but you just read that, so I guess, okay. But that's still impressive, yeah. All right, so that's cool. So 17 tons, 55 miles an hour. This is a dragster, They had to get somebody to play this in the movies. They have to get Steve McQueen to drive this. So.
Another cool thing about this is it's one of the more comfortable ones to ride in. Every crew member had a seat.
Oh, what was it? How many crews?
It was a crew 5.
Okay.
There was a driver and an assistant driver, which was unique with this tank too. The assistant driver could do everything that the driver could do, except parking brake.
Okay, so it had dual controls?
Had dual controls.
All right.
And then there was a commander, a gunner, and a loader.
How many of the commanders got shot in the head because they didn't have any?
I do not know.
Protection up there.
One of the things that it did have, one benefit that you might not expect is that because it had that open top, didn't have a top plate, they really benefited from the extra visibility.
Yeah.
They could...
Oh, yeah, turn around and
they could get in there, turn around, and locate tanks a lot easier than their German counterparts could.
Yep.
And that was a significant part to their being that quick, speedy...
Yep. All right.
Quick, speedy roll.
That's cool. All right. Well, we wanted. I think those are awesome. I think it just shows a difference in variety of tanks, and every tank they designed had a niche, some niche or niche.
Mm-hmm.
Now some tanks perform better than those, and some not. Sometimes we design this and got, and then they'd fail. But this is one that went out and did pretty well. Did it have a after-war life?
It did. It would not as much as the other tank we're going to talk about tonight, but it did have some of an after-war life. It served in the Korean War as well.
All right, cool.
One of the other things about it that was special, two things. One, it was one of the first tanks to have the Torquematic transmission.
Oh, automatic transmission.
Yep, it had an automatic transmission, and it had torsion bars, which, if you'll remember from our other
Like
American tanks, it's more like a German tank as far as its suspension than some of those other.
My Chevy pickup truck I had a torsion bar suspension.
Yeah, the other U.S. tanks had that VVSS suspension, and it was a lot rougher ride than those torsion bars. Yeah. So that's one of the things that helped it get to 55 miles an hour. And actually, the engine probably could have taken it higher. The 55 was a governed speed.
Yeah, if they put a supercharger in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a supercharged
so tank.
Probably running 350 normally aspirated. Probably running 500-600 horsepower supercharged in.
Yeah. So
it would lay rubber or lay tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Do donuts.
Yeah, do donuts in a parking lot with a tank.
Yeah. So that's I think it's a fun tank. It shows that they're kind of going to the a lighter, more mobile type fighting at this point, because there's no way any of the Allied tanks, I don't care who they were, could stand toe-to-toe with the Tigers, the Panthers, or by the time these things showed up, the King Tigers were showing up.
Right.
And so there's no way you could go toe-to-toe with them, so what's a good way to go with that? Just run around them.
Yep.
Piss them off.
Mm-hmm. Swarm them.
Swarm them, yep. All right. Did you say how many they built?
Yeah, 2,507, I believe.
So they made a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So they didn't make 40,000 like the Sherman, but that was okay.
Yeah, they made quite a few.
All right. Now, I'm going to unbox this one. I ordered this tank in just for tonight. This is supposed to be. It looks like it's intact, though.
What is it, Doug?
It's a M24 Chaffee. Oh, the only casualty on the shipping, it looks like, was that's a cool tank.
What's the machine gun?
It's a machine gun, but I can just slide that right in there somehow. Don't worry about sticking it on there for real. All right. Well, I'm unsuccessful. I don't want to break off the stand. There we go. No. Anyway, here's the 50 caliber machine gun. I assume that's what it is, and we will glue that in there one of these days.
Yep, 50 caliber Browning machine gun.
All right, that's the standard old U.S.
Yep.
All right, so this is a M24 Chaffee. So I don't know too much about these, except for the silly machine gun that keeps falling off. So, Adam, did you study up on these? Can you tell us about a Chaffee tank?
I did. There were 4,731 produced.
4,000?
Mm-hmm. So
these are quite prolific, too.
Yeah, but twice as prolific as the one we just talked about.
It's a lot smaller than a Sherman.
It is.
I got a Sherman kicking on there somewhere.
It is 40,000 pounds or 18 tons.
So it's half the size of the Sherman.
It is a light tank, and it was built for that purpose. It was supposed to be a replacement to the Stuart, which is the preceding light tank.
Oh, that little Stuart thing?
Mm-hmm.
We're going to talk about those in another day. So, yeah, they're a lot smaller than a got the same machine gun, though.
Yep.
So what was their main purpose?
I think the main purpose is just being a light tank.
Faster, more agile?
Faster, more agile. They had a 75 millimeter gun, so it's a slightly smaller caliber gun.
Well, I thought they had a 75 in the Pershing.
In the Sherman. Yeah.
So it'd be the same size as the Sherman.
Right. I was talking about the Hellcat had a 76.
The Hellcat had a bigger gun in it. Yeah. So this basically uses the same cannon as the
Sherman.
Yeah. About the same armament, but half the size. And how many crew?
Crew of 5.
So same crew complement.
Yep.
A lot smaller.
It also had an assistant driver, but the assistant driver also was the radio operator.
Okay, so it had dual controls.
It would be 5 inches taller than the Hellcat, but a bit shorter than the Sherman.
Wait, stick the Hellcat back over here. So, was this a tank that came out later in the war? So the Hellcat's a little lighter still, or about the same weight, but a little bit bigger.
Yeah, it's a little. The Hellcat would be about 10,000 pounds lighter.
Okay.
So about 5 tons lighter.
So even though it's smaller, but with the full turret and probably heavier armor.
Right.
That's where the extra weight comes in.
Yeah, it would have. This would have heavier armor. It would start at 10 millimeters and go to 38 millimeters, so it would get 14 millimeter more thick armor at its peak.
All right. Well, what's engines in it?
It had twin Cadillac Series V44 T24s. So it's a Cadillac. It has a Cadillac engine.
Well, you have a Cadillac.
I have a Cadillac. That's true.
Yeah. So,
Although I'm having car problems, I'm going to have to talk to you about that. But the Cadillac's being a pain lately.
that's too bad.
But yeah, it had a Cadillac engine in it.
Should get a Mercedes like me. My Mercedes act okay.
Yeah, but see, Mercedes didn't build tanks.
Maybach.
Is Maybach Mercedes?
Yeah.
Well, this had a Cadillac engine, and Cadillac was the first people to build M24 Chaffee. It would later get produced by somebody else later on, but they were the original designers.
What size engine and how many horsepower?
220 horsepower. Yeah, so the Chaffee has 2 Cadillac V8 engines in it.
So it had each V8 was 220 horsepower.
No, it was combined for 240 horsepower.
Okay.
It was 110 each.
Okay, so they're a fairly small V8. So, but boy, it sounds pretty cool. I bet.
Yeah, I bet.
So they had a V8. Okay, there was another smaller tank. I think that M3 you were talking about. We're going to do one on the smaller. They have smaller tanks than this, believe it or not. That we're going to talk about maybe next time, and that had twin Cadillac engines in it.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, so I had twin Cadillac V8s, so probably one for each drive. And how fast did it go?
It would not be as fast as our Hellcat, but it was still pretty fast. It was 35 miles an hour.
Okay, so faster on the top side of speed.
Right. I believe the T-34 also went 35 miles an hour.
All right.
So one of the faster tanks, but not the fastest.
Yeah. So performance-wise, it'd be similar to T-34-85.
Yeah, and with a 75 millimeter gun, a little bit smaller turret, a little bit smaller gun than the 76, but
the same as the Sherman.
Right.
Yeah. So it would do everything the Sherman would do, but faster and more agile. And armor and all that seems like it's real comparable. So, and it was a new generation tank, so that's kind of fun.
It would have a lot longer life than that Hellcat would. Post-war, it would be used all the way up until there are some still in use today.
Oh, seriously? Yeah. Well, and they built how many of them?
They built 4,731.
Yeah, and they're being used now.
Another thing about this is it also would have a torsion bar suspension.
So this is the newer generation tanks.
Yep.
So this would lead into like the M26 and the M41 Walkers, and even up to the Pershing that has the torsion bar suspensions.
Correct.
So this would be the kind of the beginning of the new Korean War and Vietnam War
Right.
type tank. So this would be kind of the new, lighter, stronger, faster tanks.
Mm-hmm.
Huh. Good looking tank.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got that in for this. That's because I knew we were doing the Hellcat tonight, so I wanted to get another tank to do on that. But that's a good looking tank.
Yeah, so the Hellcat would actually precede this in production. The Chaffee was in production from April of 1944 to August of 1945.
And they built 4,000 of them that fast.
Yep.
All right. Well, that's really interesting. I think that's a good looking tank. And their service record was how did they perform? I guess that's the most important thing.
They were well received.
All right. Well, cool. Well, that's fun. Well, that's our M24 Chaffee and our M18 Hellcat tonight. And that's pretty fun. We got 2 American tanks now. So we've done Shermans, Jumbos, the Pershing, and we did
The Lee and the Grant
and the Priest.
and the Priest.
So we've done quite a few American tanks now. So we're getting caught up. Kind of, we're starting to have to look. Now, the Americans were not nearly as prolific in their designs, which is a good thing. Because remember, we thought that all those Germans would, on a Tuesday, would design a tank for Friday's use,
Right.
They'd always design a new tank. So this one here, but this was a later design. They took a lot that they learned off of the Sherman, and then they came up with this one.
Mm-hmm. And just like all American tanks, they were less prone to drivetrain issues.
Yeah. Well, far more reliable.
All right, now go.
You got anything else that we need to add on either that or the Hellcat? Why don't you bring the Hellcat in there for a final look at it? These are the 2 tanks that we're actually highlighting tonight. Both American tanks and both newer generation tanks that started helping out with the World War II effort at the end of the war to supplement the Shermans. And so I think these are exciting new designs that they came up with that were well received and seem to function pretty well. So,
one other interesting thing about the Hellcat is that tank historians would say it was a poor design, but the crews were so proficient that it made it a successful tank.
yeah. Why was it a poor design?
I think just because of the thin armor and the open top. I think wasn't well received by critics, one might say.
Yeah, I guess thin armor, open top, putting the crew at risk. But if they have the right attitude toward the crew, get in and get out.
Yep.
Turn around, bam, turn around, and get out of there. I still like the thoughts of one of these things circling a Tiger White's
Still trying to move its turret.
Turret's getting around and shooting in the ass and bugging out of there.
Yep.
I think that'd be a fun. And of course, we're talking about death and destruction on these things. Mm-hmm. Lots of people died doing this stuff, but still.
My grandpa didn't.
Yep.
He would survive the war and have many a posterity.
All right, Adam, thank you. So without further ado, subscribe, damn it.